you for joining us today on this first day of returning to your schools. I'm sure it's a bit daunting to be with us this morning, but we really appreciate your time because we'd like to walk you through the application process for an excellent full-time career opportunity at New York City Transit. The title of the job is called Transit Electrical Helper. I think it's more important than ever this year that everyone at the CT high schools is aware of this opportunity because as of today, New York City Transit will not be funding the electrical apprenticeship program. That can change, but as of today, they are not funding that program. So this is a wonderful opportunity that would be, say, just second to the apprenticeship program. You can eventually get to the same place where the apprenticeship program will lead you. This is not a job that you will get a week after you graduate high school. This is a process. It's a New York City civil service title, so it's a process. So I encourage all of you to apply for it. And then when you are called for the title, you don't have to accept the offer. You can decline the offer. And this title opens up every year, so you can always apply next year. All right, so now my name is Debbie O'Connor. I'm Director of Recruitment for the New York City Transit Authority. I'm delighted to have with me here today my colleague Michael Nigro, who is a manager in the New York City Transit examinations team. And he's going to walk us through the website to show you where to find the online application. Now, you're very accustomed to me coming into the classroom with the paper application. We can't do that this year because of COVID. So the application is fully online. And then unfortunately, there are a few glitches in the application. And we want to show you how to work around those glitches. So that's the purpose of the meeting today. So now I'll turn it over to my colleague, Michael Nigro.
Hello, everyone. So we're going to start off at our main website. I put the website address into the chat. I also put two documents for everybody. One is the notice of examination, but the first document that I uploaded is actually a custom fee waiver document that we're going to refer to when we get to that part of the process. So the first step, though, is to go to www.mta.info. That's what I've done here. I'm actually sharing my screen now. This is my mouse spinning in a circle. And once we're at this web page, what we'll do is we'll go to the left-hand side to the menu button, and we'll click that, and then we'll go down to careers. So once we're in the career section of the MTA's website, we'll scroll down past the job postings and MTA employee opportunities. We're going to go to the section called jobs that require exams. So what I'm going to do is quickly type the path into the chat just so that everybody can see it. And then we'll proceed from there. Jobs that require exams. And, that way, if you can't do it now, you'll have the path here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, as indicated in the chat, I'm going to select find out more about upcoming exams, which is going to bring you to the our exam page, which has the schedule of examinations we plan to open in the future, as well as those that are open right now for applications, including Transit Electrical Helper exam number 1601. The direct website to the exams page, the direct path, I just put into the chat as well. That makes it easier for anyone. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to select Transit Electrical Helper, the title, which is going to bring us to the notice of examination. That's sort of the roadmap for an exam. It explains the application process, the job title, and the different aspects of the examination and how the process is going to flow from start to finish, essentially, kind of like a roadmap. So I'm going to bring us to the notice of examination. I actually put this document in the chat earlier. From this point, I think Debbie will explain a bit about the job, the exam, and then we'll go into the actual application steps.
Great. Thank you so much, Michael. And folks, I'm going to go through this a little bit quickly in the interest of time, because the most important aspect is for you to be comfortable with the online application process. So Mr. Nigro just showed you how to access this notice of examination. You can always go back to it, but feel free to upload a question in the chat, and when I'm speaking, Mr. Nigro will answer the questions, and when he's speaking, I'll answer the question. Okay? Thank you. So this is the notice of examination. As you'll see, the title is Transit Electrical Helper. The exam number is 1601. We encourage you to print this out. Print this out and keep it as a reference, all right? Because you're going to apply before midnight tomorrow, but you won't be hearing from us until probably July or maybe the end of June. You'll be very busy with graduation then. So we want you to print this out and keep a hard copy record of it, so that if you have to refer back to it, you have it. Once these close on the site, you cannot go back and get it again, okay? So that's why we encourage you to keep a hard copy. All right, so the application deadline is tomorrow, March 23rd, 2021 at midnight. What type of test will this test? Plural, see the S? So test plural. So there are two parts to the test. One is what we at Transit call an education and experience test. And that's what Mr. Nigro is going to show you how to fill out today, and a multiple choice test. Okay, what does it cost to apply for this title? Trying to bring this down a little bit. Okay, great. Thank you, Michael. Application fee is $68, but because you attend a New York City DOE CT high school, or you've graduated from one and you're not holding a full-time job, you will not have to pay the $68 fee. And we will show you what to do to secure a fee waiver. I'll go through this again later, but this is very important, ladies and gentlemen. There is a section in this document about how to obtain a fee waiver. You will ignore that section. Okay, you will not use that section for your fee waiver. Mr. Nigro created a one-page document that you will submit to secure the fee waiver. So it'll be a little bit easier for you, less cumbersome. All right, and the multiple choice test is expected to begin on July 6th. Now, why does it say expected to begin? Well, in the pre-COVID world, we would have one, maybe two test dates, and we would bring everyone who applied into a high school classroom, and you'd all sit there at the desks and take the test. But now, because of COVID, we have to be very careful about the number of people we have in a facility because of the social distancing requirements. So we will start to call people on July 6th. We don't know when that will end because it will depend on the number of people who have applied for the title. Okay. Now, what do transit electrical helpers do? Well, they do a lot, but they are always working under supervision. So remember that we don't expect you to come to transit, we'll plop you, in your role and expect you to work on your own. No, helpers always work under supervision. They assist maintainers and supervisors in the installation, maintenance, testing, and repair of electrical, electromechanical, and electronic equipment in various New York City transit departments. Transit electrical helpers will need to operate a motor vehicle to and from work assignments. They will also need to keep records and write reports and perform related work. Now, the really cool thing about this title is you can be assigned to many different areas at the Transit Authority. You can be assigned to signal maintenance. You can be assigned to light maintenance. And what do light maintainers do? They maintain, install, inspect, test, and do alterations and repairs on lighting and related equipment. Every single unit that you're going to see here is key critical for the effective operation of the subway system. Clearly, we can't run without signals functioning. Clearly, the system needs to be well lit. Electronic equipment maintenance. If you're assigned to that team, you will work on electronic communications equipment like closed circuit televisions and control systems, right? Very key critical to the effective operation of the Transit Authority. Elevator and escalator maintenance. Well, This is key to most buildings, right, around the city and the 5 boroughs. You will learn how to, you'll be working on repairing and installing elevators, escalators, electronically operated drawbridges, and related electrical and mechanical equipment. What about ventilation and drainage? Well, you've got to have air in the subway system. And because many of the stations are underground, tons and tons of water come into the system every day, and that has to be pumped out. So you could be assigned to ventilation and drainage, and you would work on the maintenance and repair of ventilation and drainage systems. That includes fans, blowers, compressors, pumps, sewage ejectors, and related equipment. Then we have multiple positions in power distribution. One is with third rail and one is electrical power maintenance. And then last but not least, telephone maintenance is also another unit that you could find yourself working in. And you will work to repair and maintain and install telephones, intercom systems, emergency alarms, firearms, cables, electronics, and other communication systems and materials. Also from this list, we will be hiring signal maintainer trainees. And if you qualify, you can be assigned to work in as a signal maintainer trainee. What I want to say to you, ladies and gentlemen, again, is that New York City Transit, the MTA is the largest transportation system in North America. So think about it. You come to transit, you're going to see things that you won't see anywhere else. The system is 100 years old. You'll see the old and you'll see the modern and you'll see the new technology. And the training that you get will help you to build your skill set so that you can stay and have a fabulous career at the MTA. Or, quite frankly, you can take the skill that you're learning and you can leverage it anywhere. There probably aren't too many municipalities in the country that don't have some sort of public transportation system. So it's a win-win for you to come. You can come, you'll learn, you can stay, or you can go elsewhere and move around, right? So I think it's a very fine opportunity. So let's go down to the salary and benefits, please, Mr. Nigro. Thank you. I can't seem to move okay, thank you. All right, so now I just want to show you, as you can see quickly by looking at this, there are different base starting hourly rates depending upon where you are placed. Electrical power, you start at 22 and change. Signal maintainer trainee, it's 23 and change. But a basic transit electrical helper working in those subdivisions that I just explained to you or read to you, except electrical power, you start at 22.38 an hour for a 40-hour work week. That's an annual salary right out of high school while you're training of $46,550 a year. Okay, so the basic salary is $46,500. In addition to that, you will all receive a transit commuter pass, which you will definitely use to get to and from work, but you can also use it on the weekends or whenever you'd like to travel for your leisure. So we equate that to be about another $2,700 of cash compensation onto your $46,000 a year. You'll have a free transit pass that only you, and we stress that only you can use 24/7. And then in addition, you'll have a robust benefit package, which will offer you medical, dental, vision, other insurances, credit union access, um, pension plan, investment plans, paid sick time, and paid vacation time. So it's a robust package, and that benefit package adds on at least $8,000 in compensation. Okay? Now, how do you qualify for this title? Well, there are 4 ways to qualify, as you see, but you qualify through number 3, graduation from a vocational high school with a major course of study in electrical, electronic, or electromechanic technology, or a closely related field like electrical installation. All right, that falls under electrical. So you qualify. If you graduate from co-op tech or energy and technology, concentrating in electronics, electromechanical technology, or electrical technology by June 20th of this year, you will qualify for this exam with a score of 70. That's the minimum passing score. Any questions about that?
Um,
Do we have a question? Okay, so we'll keep going then, Mr. Nigro, please. Okay. Yep, we'll go down. Okay. Now, requirements to be appointed on page 4. Does anybody know what appointment means? To be appointed. Does anybody know what that means? Oh, I'm going to type it into the chat.
the requirements to be appointed, you said?
Yes, but what does the word appointed mean?
Doesn't it mean to be directed or to be chosen for something?
Yes, very good. It means that you've been hired, right? We'd like to hire you. But when you're appointed to the role, you must meet a couple of requirements, one of which is a New York State driver's license. Well, a license that's valid in New York State. So, ladies and gentlemen, you must be working toward securing your driver's license. You don't need to have your driver's license to apply for this job, but when you are appointed for this job, and that's going to take a while, that's going to take a minimum of 6 to 18 months to be called for this job. You must have your driver's license, okay? And then you'll have to pass a drug screening test. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, regardless of what substances will be legal, doesn't mean they're going to be legal for you to work at the transit authority, okay? So right now, illegal substances, alcohol is legal, but you still can't be under the influence. All right, you must not be using illegal substances and you must not be under the influence. Why? Because the work that you do is done in difficult situations, some dangerous situations, and you can get hurt. And if you're not at the top of your game every day and you're not repairing or installing the equipment properly, other people can get hurt or get killed. So the transit authority's #1 mission is to move people safely to their destination, and the safety of our employees is key critical as well. Okay, so you'll have to pass the drug screening. There's a medical requirement. You probably don't know that the MTA operates the largest occupational medical facility in North America. We have 5 medical centers all over the 5 boroughs of New York City. We hire doctors, nurses, phlebotomists, and you'll come to our medical center to be assessed for your fitness for the job. You do not need to be a New York City resident. You can be living anywhere as long as you can get to work on time. You will have to pass an English proficiency requirement, and that's because, again, safety is key. You have to be able to be understood and to give direction in English where others can understand you. So you have to speak clearly, right? Because if you must be able to take direction and give direction so that everyone who's working with you can understand you so that no one gets hurt. And proof of identification, you must hold permanent work authorization in the United States to qualify for this role. You don't have to be a citizen, but you must have permanent work authorization for the United States to qualify for this role, okay? Now, how to obtain an application? Well, Mr. Nigro just showed you how to do that. If there are any problems with you signing on or getting the application filled out after this tutorial today, there is an email address here, and I'm going to put it in the chat for you. Okay, examsunit@nyct.com. If you're having any difficulty at all, you can reach out to them and they will assist you. All right, so Mr. Nigro will go back through this, how to take an exam, but how to file the exam. But before he does, I'd like.
You want to
Go
go
ahead.
skip this, want to skip this part and we'll go over the,
Yes, if you don't mind, Michael,
Sure.
I'd like to just skip this part for now. and to go to page 6, everyone, to show you that once the exam closes, you've applied, the examinations team here at the New York City Transit Authority will start to assess all of the applications. Now, this is very important. What was the date that the exams will begin? Does anybody remember?
Oh,
July
yes.
8th.
June
What was the
16th.
date that the exam would begin? Okay, I put it in the chat. July 6th was the date, right? The NOE said July 6th, the exams will begin. So 10 days before the exams begin, see what that first paragraph says? The admission letter is very important. 10 days before July 6th, which is June 22nd, okay? So you're going to be very busy with graduation and excited about all that good stuff that happens before graduation. But if you don't hear from Transit by June 22nd, we want you to reach out to the exams unit email and tell them that you applied for this title and you have not heard from us. And then they will work with you to get you your ticket of admission and your exam date, okay? All right. If you are deemed to be not qualified at any step in this process, all right, if you receive a letter that says, oh, by the way, you are not qualified for this exam, could that be accurate? What do you think? If you're graduating from a CT high school by June 30th of this year with a concentration in electrical installation, you should be qualified as to number 3 in the how to qualify section. So if you receive an email from the Transit Authority that says you were deemed to be not qualified, you can appeal that decision. And we will show you the email address later on to appeal that decision, and you should appeal that decision, okay? We don't want to lose any of you, so you should appeal the decision. All right, now let's talk about the test, because I often hear, well, gee, what's the test like? Well, remember, there are 2 parts to the test. The exam consists of a competitive education and experience test, which we're going to go through now, and qualifying multiple choice test. Your score on the competitive education and experience test, which you will submit with your application, must be a 70 so that you qualify to take the multiple choice test. And again, you will have a 70 if you graduate from a CT high school by June 30th of this year and you studied electrical installation, okay? All right, so I think we can scroll down now. Okay, yep, keep going. Okay, so people say to me, well, gee, how do I qualify for the test? What will be on the, no, I'm sorry, how do I study for the test? What will be on the test? Well, here's a snapshot of what's going to be on the test on page 7. All right, it will include questions that require the use of any of the following abilities. Writing comprehension, because remember, the transit electrical helper has to write reports and take notes, and you have to follow instructions. So writing comprehension, written comprehension and written expression is very important. So you have to have the ability to understand written sentences and paragraphs. For example, understanding written bulletins released by the MTA. So on the test, they could give you a bulletin that says, this is just an example. I'm not saying it's a test question. If you tested positive for COVID-19, before you report back to work, you must do X, Y, Z. And then you will be asked, what do you have to do to return back to the transit authority to work if you had a positive COVID exam? And then you'll select the multiple choice answers. But you will be given the memo in front of you, so not to worry, okay? Written expression, the ability to use English words and sentences in writing so that others can understand. For an example, write up an incident report regarding to an unusual occurrence on the job. All right, deductive reasoning, the ability to apply general rules to specific problems to come up with logical answers. It involves deciding if an answer makes sense. So an example of this is applying an MTA New York City Transit rule and regulation to a situation to determine the appropriate course of action. For example, you have to leave the job site immediately. What do you have to do before you leave the job site immediately? And you will have the memo there that tells you what transit requires. So you'd have to read the memo and select the right multiple choice answer for that question, okay? Informing information ordering, the ability to follow correctly a rule or a set of rules to arrange things and actions in certain order. The rules or set of rules used must be given. The things or action to be put in order can include numbers, letters, words, pictures, procedures, sentences, mathematical or logical operations. For example, you may be asked to follow a step-by-step procedure to connect a cable to the third rail for power, and you will be given the procedure, okay? And then lastly, number facility, the ability involving the degree to which adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing can be done quickly and directly, all right? So that's the test in a nutshell. So how do you prepare? You study real hard, you focus on your Ohm's law, you focus on how to use a multimeter, you focus on applying Ohm's law, you get a good night's sleep the night before you're coming in for the test, and you eat a power breakfast, okay? Okay, test results. Test results, you're going to be informed of your test results. Again, if you pass the competitive education and experience test and qualifying multiple tests, your name will be placed on the final score. I'm sorry, on the list in final score order, and then you will be called in for the job accordingly. So for example, everybody thinks top score is 100, right? And you get a 70 just by virtue of completing this EETP properly and by graduating from your high school and focusing in an area of study entitled electrical installation. But there are other people, this is open to the public. So a veteran might apply for this test, and a veteran gets an extra 5 points because of their service. And if it's a disabled veteran takes this test, the disabled veteran can get an extra 10 credits. So there could potentially be people on the list who have a score of 110. So transit would start with the highest score, which could be 110, and then they'll start calling people in until they get to the list of the 70s. Ladies and gentlemen, once the test list is established, it remains open and active for 4 years. But we rarely take 4 years to get through the transit electrical helper list. Typically, those lists are used up in less than 24 months. So I'm not suggesting you'll have to wait 4 years. The likelihood of you have to waiting 4 years to be called is very slim. But just so you know that the list, once you're on it, stays active for 4 years. Okay, and I think we can skip the additional training. Mr. Nigro, in the interest of time, just know that you will be trained on the job for safety and for you're always working with a maintainer and a supervisor. Let's talk a little bit about special arrangements, okay? If you cannot come in on your given test date for religious observance reasons, or you need special testing accommodations, all right, if you need extra time to take the exam, if you need the questions read to you, if you have an accident and you can't record your test, the test questions, then you can request a special accommodation. And the guidelines for the special accommodation section will be this website here. You'll click on that link and you can file the attached application during this period. So for those of you who might have an IEP and you know what accommodation you might need right now, Mr. Nigro, they should fill this out now at this point in time.
There's nothing exactly to fill out. Attached to the end of the notice of examination is a document called the Special Circumstances Guide. And that actually explains the requirements and what needs to be done to request an alternate test date due to religious observance,
Okay,
special testing accommodation. But the important thing to remember about this section, aside from, reading that, which is further down in the document, is the makeup tests. If someone needs a makeup test, they really should email us, or even anticipates needing one, they should email us as soon as possible. We sometimes don't have a lot of opportunities to afford makeup tests. These are typically the reasons that we can afford makeup tests, but let us know as soon as possible so we can explain whether or not your situation is likely to warrant a makeup test, or is it going to be one that a situation that we're permitted to afford one for. So I'm putting into the chat our email address.
I
And
just did,
Debbie,
Mr. Nigro.
Debbie did
Yeah.
the same thing. So,
Okay.
that's what's really important to remember about this section. After you apply, you need to familiarize yourself with the this particular section if you think you're going to need an accommodation due to religious observance, meaning an alternate test date typically, or a special testing accommodation like extended time or a separate testing environment. The Special Circumstances Guide, which is attached to the notice of examination, it explains how to go about requesting this and what needs to be submitted. It's crucial that you do so as soon as possible. That way, if anything is deficient or we need to clarify anything or explain anything further, we can start having that conversation sooner than later. It's unfortunate if a request like that were to come in late and we couldn't afford someone an accommodation or an alternate test date or a makeup, then you kind of lose your candidacy. So just let us know as soon as possible if this applies to you.
So, Mr. Nigro, they should let you know if this applies to them at exams unit.
Well, it doesn't. You can email us at examsunit@nyct.com. That's our general email address for most questions, but we actually have a dedicated email account specifically for accommodations and makeups, which I put into the chat. And
Okay, so the makeups is also, I'm confused this morning and I apologize. The makeup and the special accommodation is the same website.
it's the same email address.
I'm sorry, the same email address.
So I mean, but we, the same team is answering both emails, so it really,
Right.
I
That's what I
wouldn't
thought.
get too hung up on that. Just make sure you reach out to us and let us know as soon as possible and provide us with any
Okay.
applicable supporting documentation.
Okay, and just the only thing to point out there is you can't get a makeup because you have to go to a birthday party or a wedding typically. It's usually those 4 issues that Mr. Nigro showed you in the applications. You can go back and read those again at your leisure, okay?
Yeah, it's as Debbie said, like we're kind of limited on on the types of situations that we're allowed to give makeups, and the reasons here on page 9 of the
Page
notice of
9.
examination are typically the only approvable reasons that we've got. So let us know as soon as possible what you think your situation is, so we can let you know if it sounds like one that will qualify for a makeup or an accommodation.
And then, Mr. Nigro, just before you start now with the application, can you just tell them or remind me what page the special accommodation begins at, direct instructions begin at?
It's the first page of the Special Circumstances Guide, which is starts on page.
There we go. Okay.
It starts. I can't.
Well, we'll just say it's the special
It's the last part. Yeah,
circumstances.
it's the last couple
Okay.
pages of the notice of examination document that we
Okay.
put into the chat. It explains what the deadline and the documentation requirements for accommodations. It's just take a look at it when you get a chance, and if you have any questions, just email us. Sooner is better than later, just because it takes some time to plan accommodations and alternate arrangements.
Okay, so now, Mr. Nigro, if you'd like to walk them through the application, that would be perfect.
Sure. Does anyone have any questions before we begin? I've been trying to answer them as they come in on the chat. Okay. Well, there's a question. Okay, Daniel, is there only multiple choice or is there a written test too? We would actually consider a multiple choice test a written test, but there won't be like an essay test or something where you need to fill in the blanks. The multiple choice test is the only test to in-person test to pass this examination. There will be an English, what we call a qualifying safety proficiency assessment for those who successfully complete the exam. That's going to primarily consist of the assessment of, I believe it's oral comprehension and oral expression, but that would be upon consideration for appointment. So that's going to be after you get your results and successfully complete the exam. Do we have to mail the fee waiver? Yes, I'm gonna discuss that when we get to it, because of obvious limitations. We're trying to promote mostly online applications where possible. We have far fewer staff available to open mail. So we'd like them to focus their efforts on linking up your fee waiver documents to your online applications, as opposed to inputting all of the data from your paper applications, which may have been the procedure in the past. So because we're worried about overlooking anything that might be sent in an email, we really do need the fee waiver documents, which I'll show you now. We really do need those mailed to us by April 6th, which we will discuss. So we made a one-page document. It's really just your identifying information with a couple key numbers that help us link them up to your app. You got to give us your full social, or at least the last four, but an online application confirmation number would be good as well. If you've applied for exams before, an applicant ID number would be helpful, but at the very least, your full name, to contact information, so we can make sure that we can link this document when we receive it in the mail up to your online application.
Right, so don't send in the fee waiver application until you've applied online and you get your confirmation number, and then you can write your online application confirmation number write that into the fee waiver document, please.
Okay, so we're gonna go into that so we don't get too ahead of ourselves. Why
Okay.
isn't the fee waiver allowed through the online application? The system actually doesn't permit it, and it would probably take us a more significant amount of time to download and print those documents than we've really got available staff. So that's a good question. Another question is, each test needed to take is going to be different dates, how far apart? Well, the only in-person test you need to pass the exam is the multiple choice test, the qualifying multiple choice test, which means it's pass fail. The English, the safety proficiency assessment, which actually will help to measure English comprehension, that won't be administered until you'll reach for appointment consideration. So I can't really estimate how far apart those two will be. Really depends on how you do on the first one. So that's a good question. I would probably estimate at least 3 or 4 months apart for the first round of the safety proficiency assessment. I think that's the only questions right now. Okay, so let's proceed. We're gonna start. All right, so on page 5 of the notice of examination, there's the online application section and the how to submit an application part of the notice of examination. Since you will be, most people will be requesting a fee waiver, you're only going to need to complete steps 1 through 4, and you'll stop right here. The part under here pertains to people who will be mailing in typical fee waiver documentation. You will be mailing in the document that we've shared with you, and your coordinators also have as well. You must mail this to us postmarked by April 6th. So you'll do this after you apply. And we're going to go over these 4 steps. These 4 steps are all you're going to need to do in the online application. But as Debbie said before, there are some things to be aware of in the system. So we're going to go slowly, and I'm going to describe each thing that I'm doing as I'm doing them. All right, so the first thing that's going to occur is you're going to click on this link because you're not active MTA employees. Now, when I click on this link, there's a possibility it's going to warn me about allowing or enabling cookies. There's an easy way around this, and that's just by going backwards. So I'm going to click on this link, and it warns me about cookies. So I'm going to hit the back button to go back to the NOE again. And I'm just going to click the link one more time on page 5, which is going to reveal the open competitive or entry-level examinations that are open for applications right now on our website. So the simple workaround there, when you're presented with a cookies message or an enabling cookies thing, because it's a security protocol, just go backwards and do it again. That tells the system that you're They're good to go. So what we're going to do now is, I assume most people here don't have application accounts in our system. So I'm going to register as a new user, and I'm going to go over those steps. If you need to save the notice of examination, you can access it again by clicking this hyperlink. But what we're going to do first is click apply, which is going to prompt me to either sign in or to register. I'm going to register because I want to show you how to do that. Very important here. Whatever you put in here, you got to make sure that you remember it. So I'm going to put in test 5 and a password. I'm doing this really for speed and to demo this, but everybody else, when you put this information in, make sure that you put in accurate information and that you remember what you entered. The email address must be one at which we can contact you. That's very, very, very important. We may, especially nowadays, we may actually, I'm putting in a fake one, but you should put in the one that you get and the phone number that you get the most of. You get the, okay, let's make sure. Put in, now when you're entering in your address, it's very important that you include any relevant apartment numbers or unit numbers or anywhere that makes sure that the mail gets to you. That is crucial. I can't overemphasize that. Sometimes people will put in, the building, but there's, 6 to 60 units in that building. That's not a complete address at which we can reach you. So please try to input the most. So we've got a question. What link do you press to apply? The link that I pressed to get here was actually the button that says apply, and then I clicked register. That's the first thing you're going to need to do. I'm unable to go backwards at this moment, but once we got to the website, what I did was the website that lists the 3 open competitive examinations that are open right now. I clicked on register as a new user. If you've already applied for our exams, then what you can do is you can log in, but I'm registering as a new user right now. Does the password always shorten to 3 dots regardless? That's a good question, Jaden. I believe so. It did that for me today, even though I put in more. So what I just did was actually register. I wrote down the user ID I created, the password I created. I'm aware of I get mail at the email I created. And what I'm going to do now is this is actually the button that I clicked to get to the registration screen. When I click it again, since I'm signed in as someone who just registered, it's going to prompt me for a few additional pieces of information, such as the social security number. This is very important that you enter in the correct social security number because that's actually a number that's used as a unique identifier of civil service examination candidates in the city of New York. This is actually a civil service examination that the MTA, New York City Transit Personnel Selection Testing Unit, are administering. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to enter in a social that I've actually created. And it's going to warn me, it's going to say, please be mindful when entering the social security number. The person whose social is entering is the person applying. It's very important. Sometimes what we get is somebody who logged in for somebody else and tried to do the application. But what that does is it creates an app for their social. And it's very hard to undo that if it's even possible. Typically it's not, because usually when this is identified, the application period is over. So they're going to ask you for your date of birth. I'm putting in a fake one. You can put in the right one, but we're not going to use that for anything. This is a typical field that's required in PeopleSoft for creating an applicant account. Double check your email address, double check your phone number. That's Debbie. Okay. And if everything is good, you can put in additional if you want. Sometimes if we can't reach someone at the first one, we'll try a second one. I'm not going to add any additionals here. I'm going to continue for the sake of time. Okay. So that means what I just did was I just registered as an applicant. And when I checked off that I wanted to apply, I actually entered in my social and I entered in all my identifying information, which brought me automatically to this page. this is actually the application. It's the online application. It's got a starting point, which is where we are now, a section that goes over the exam details again, and it's got a preferences section. This is for people who want to request veterans credit or indicate to us that they plan on requesting an accommodation. And this is the education experience test. This is really the next kind of big focal point, but I'm going to go through each section. So I've read this already. You should read it as well. And once you're done reading it, you're going to check that you've read and agree to the above terms and agreements. You're going to click next. As I click next, what you're going to notice up top is that we're actually moving along this process flow or timeline, so to speak. Now, this is very important. As Debbie said, printing out the notice of examination, saving the notice of examination, it's crucial. I mean, I've got a copy here saved on my desktop, but I can't emphasize enough how important it is to save this and read it carefully. On the bottom of every page, it actually says to save this for future reference. Most questions we are asked can be answered in the notice of examination. It's not saying that we don't want to answer them, but we'd rather focus our time on clarifying if possible. So please familiarize yourself with this, because if you don't, you could miss an opportunity. Also, we're going to operate under the assumption that everyone has read the notice. So you're going to check off that you've read it in this part of the application process. You can disregard everything beneath this section. This is really when we allow mail-in applications to the general application public. But for this exam, we're primarily focusing on online applications. Giovanni, what's your question? Giovanni has a lot of good questions. I'm going to proceed. Type it in as you can, and we're going to go to we're going to go to the next part. So once I check off here, this is another opportunity to view the notice of examination. Once I acknowledge that I've read it, I'm going to click next, and it's going to take me to a preferences screen. Now, as Debbie described, this is the special circumstances guide again, and this is the examinations credits. We actually split up these two into two sections, but attached to the notice of examination, these two documents are at the very end. So please read them. If you check off that you're going to request an accommodation or religious observance alternate date, that's not enough to actually get them. That's for our planning purposes. You're going to need to submit an actual request if you want those things, and do so as soon as possible. I don't think veterans credit apply to anybody here, but just be aware that you have to request them before the list is established. So here's a good opportunity to do so in the application. Giovanni's question: if you were called and you were unable to pick up at the moment, do you guys call again? That's a very good question. We're going to hold that, or Debbie can speak to it for right now. I think it's important to get through this part first, but very good question, Giovanni. I'm
going to answer that, Mr.
Okay.
Nigro.
I'm going to proceed. Okay, good. I'm going to proceed here to the next part. And this is really the most important aspect, I think, of the online application, in addition to making sure that the applicants are familiar with all of the details in the notice of examination. The EET, or Education Experience Test, is crucial. So I don't believe that foreign education applies to anybody here, but in the event that you've got foreign education that you need to qualify, please familiarize yourself with the foreign education fact sheet. And we've got a couple boxes here for you to indicate, but I don't think it applies to anybody. What should be really relevant to this particular group here is the high school part. Now, I'm going to populate this as if I'm a student who's graduating by June 30th, but has not yet graduated. So as I go through this, that's how I'm going to be operating. I'm going to be pretending that I'm a student from the High School of Energy and Technology in the Bronx, and I haven't graduated yet, but I will be. If you've already graduated, by all means, indicate the date that you've graduated, and continue to follow the steps with me that are applicable to you. I'll explain what they are. So I'm going to pretend that I'm graduating in June, but for the system's sake, I'm going to say that I already did, because that's going to tell it that I'm already qualified, even though I may not have reached that point just yet. Ooh, got to put in 2021. What I'm doing right now is I'm actually putting in What I believe is probably what most people will put in that are not graduating until June or sometime between now and then is I'm going to actually tell the system that I already graduated. Then what I'm going to do, and I'm going to put in the vocational specialty, the location name of the high school, vocational high school. I'm going to say I already graduated, but I'm going to scroll down to the experience section. And on the way there, I'm going to check off that I don't have military experience, which is going to ask me if I'm sure, and I'm going to say yes. And then I'm going to go down to the employment section. Now, if you've got relevant employment experience, by all means, complete as many of these screens as necessary to cover that experience because it can only help your score. But as Debbie said before, we typically use these eligible lists so that a 70 and 100 really aren't that different. And we use them kind of quickly because it's a high need title. What if you're in co-op tech? Is graduation from that school necessary if you already graduated high school?
Yes, I believe so, Mr. Nyro, because if you have to have graduated from the school where you studied electrical installation. So does that
Yeah.
answer the question? Yep.
Daniel, does that answer the question? We're operating under the assumption most people in this presentation will be qualifying by graduating with a vocational high school degree with a vocational high school specialty in a qualifying discipline such as electrical installation. If you've already graduated, by all means, put the correct information here.
I'm sorry, let me jump in for a second. Daniel, the high school that you graduated from, were you studying electrical there, or are you only now studying electrical at Co-op Tech? Because I think that would be I think that would answer the question more clearly.
I'm only now studying electrical.
And when will you graduate from Co-op Tech, Daniel?
I believe in June, since this is my second year.
Okay, then I would put down Co-op Tech, and as Mr. Nigro just showed you, since you're applying in March, put down 03/2021, even though that's not your actual graduation date, and then fill in the school name as Co-op Tech.
That's correct. Yeah, the system really wants graduations that have occurred by the time of applying, but I'm gonna show you a workaround utilizing the experience section to make it easier on our reviewers and to make sure that people aren't inappropriately disqualified. If you've already graduated, by all means, put the correct information here because that will find you qualified. But the system still does require you to check off whether or not you have military experience and to create at least one job. And because of that, I'm going to use this to indicate the future date of graduation for a vocational high school student who will be graduating by June 30th. If you have relevant work experience as described in the notice of examination, please create whatever number of jobs that you need to illustrate that correctly because it can only help your score, which can only help you get invited to the test faster. I understand people may not want that, but it can also get you considered for employment faster. Now, as Debbie said, that's not a huge deal in a title and exam like this. So if we're ready, I'm going to proceed with creating a job that's for students that don't have relevant work experience and for
Right, so
students
does
that haven't
every,
graduated yet.
Mr. Nigro, before you do that, I'm just to drive the point home. You qualify because you're graduating from high school, but because this application is also requiring everybody who qualifies by graduating from high school to also fill in this section B, which unfortunately is a little glitch, but you've got to do this, fill out section B the way Mr. Nigro is going to show you, exactly the way he's showing you, okay? So just want to drive that home, ladies and gentlemen. You might say to yourself, why do I have to fill this out if I'm not working full time? This time you have to fill out section B. Okay, Mr. Nigro, you can proceed.
Yeah, so for anyone who doesn't have qualifying experience, this is the way that we're going to do this. It's a way to so what you put in the first box here is whenever you started your qualifying schooling. The last date has to be can't be beyond the current month and year. What we're going to do here is we're going to put student graduating June 2021. And what that does is it tells us in combination with the education box that you're going to satisfy this one job requirement, and it clearly illustrates that although you haven't graduated yet, you will be graduating by the notice of examinations deadline. I'm putting in the information for people that are going to the High School of Energy and Technology.
Right. Those of you who attend Co-op Tech, you'll put in Co-op Tech there, okay?
Okay. Now, if you've actually got qualifying experience, your duty should be a bit more descriptive than what I'm putting in here, but this is satisfactory for the purposes of creating a job from your applicable education.
And those of you who have graduated alumni on this call, you may have relevant work experience. Probably anyone in the high school does not have that. So we're going to encourage you to fill out this section exactly as Mr. Nigro has just done. Duty number 1, studying electrical installation. And remember to make that 50% over on the right. And duty number 2, applying electrical installation, 50%, because your percentages must add up to 100.
So there's a good question here. You only need to put your work experience in this section if it's relevant. If it's not relevant based on the notice of examination, there's no need to include it. Like I wouldn't include that I worked at a deli for 10 years while in school. It's just not relevant for this particular title. Now, if and when you're hired, they will ask for employment history back to high school, but you're not going to need to put any work experience here unless it's relevant. However, if you've got no relevant work experience, you do need to create at least one job. So what you'll do is you'll actually describe the schooling that gets you qualified by following basically what I've done here, which helps to illustrate that this individual will be qualified by the deadline, although they don't have the qualifying education just yet. It will be achieved by June 30th of 2021. Okay, so I'm going to actually proceed if there's no other questions. And everything looks good on this end. So what I'm going to do is hit next. So you're going to disregard the payment instructions up here. The most important part of this is that you check off this box that you confirm that everything is accurate. And what we just did was paint an accurate picture that you haven't graduated yet. You will graduate by the applicable deadline. And then I'm going to click submit. Now this looks like it's going to be looking for payment from you, but it's not going to be because you're going to actually stop at the next screen. Now I clicked submit and I got presented with a confirmation number. This is the end of your application online. But what you'll do is you'll write down this confirmation number and you're going to put it on that fee waiver document that you're going to print out and mail us right in the online application number section. This will help us to link this up. We got a question here. What about the license section if you have a driver's license? Yeah, you can put that in if you'd like to put that in, but oh, I don't know how I did that. You can put that in if you'd like to put that in the driver's license part of that part, but it's not relevant. And I'll tell you why it's not relevant, because you don't need a license to compete in the exam. The education experience test is a test in order to determine those people who are qualified to compete in the examination. The driver's license is a requirement to be appointed. It's something they're going to verify if and when you reach for consideration for employment, but I believe anyone who successfully completes this exam will be reached for that. And the next question from Mamadou is if you file out under the program, you are the name of your school, and where do you change program to graduate from there? Is there going to be a problem? That's a good question. Basically, what you're saying is that you you're competing in the exam under the assumption that you're going to graduate from a certain school by June 30th. But what happens if you graduate from a different school by June 30th? If it's also qualifying, you're fine. You were found qualified to compete in the examination based on presenting or explaining how you meet the qualifications. We're just going to go based on what you tell us. If and when you reach for consideration, what they're going to check is if you graduated from an appropriate program by June 30th of 2021. If this switch causes you not to graduate by that date, then you won't be found to have met the minimum qualifications to compete or to be appointed. So it's kind of a wash at that point. Is that the last of the, so I'm just going to show one more time. This is the end of the application process for you all. When you get this confirmation number, that's the end. And just to put it into perspective, we'll go back to the notice of examination, page 5, and you can see that we've now completed steps 1 through 4. The only remaining ingredient is that you mail us that document, that fee waiver document, by Tuesday, April 6th. Nothing else in this section is applicable to the students. 1 through 4, or recent grads. 1 through 4, that confirmation number is the last thing that we got. And we're going to put it on the fee waiver document after putting our school name, your full name, your signature, the date, at least the last 4 of the social. That'll give us one more identifier, a good working phone number, good working email address, and full mailing address. Can you explain the working part again, please? Alexis, could you just clarify, what do you mean by the working part? You can talk. Yeah.
Oh, okay. The part where if you don't have any past working experience.
Yes. If you don't have any relevant work experience, the system still wants you to put something. So what you're going to do is you're going to actually put your vocational high school information. You're going to put the job title as a student graduating in June, and you're going to put at least 2 duties, and those duties will be studying electrical installation and applying electrical installation, each for 50% of the time, which adds up to 100. That way the system is able to allow you to proceed. But it helps to also illustrate that although the person indicated that they already graduated, they helped to clarify for us that they won't be graduating until June. It makes it easier for our reviewers too. That way they'll be able to see, they're going to be going through these looking for people that already meet the qualification requirements, because it's kind of uncommon that we'll have a future date for the requirements to be met. But they're going to be aware of that future date. And when they see whatever you put into the job section, they'll fully understand. If you've got
Mr. Nigro, you created a very nice job aid, and I will send the job aid, which gives you everybody the 2 screens again with the information to input. I'll send that to whom?
Yeah.
Did
I
I
can
send it to Mr. Dela Cruz and to Miss Ferguson again, and then they can send it out to all the students on the call? Or I don't know, the best way to get that job aid to everybody on this call, I'm not sure, but that would again reinforce what you just showed us how to do, Mr. Nigro.
Yeah, so yes, absolutely. Sharing a job aid would be very helpful. If anyone has any questions, they can always email us at either of those accounts that we provided before. You know, I would recommend that this be done today. I'd recommend that people work on this today if they believe that they
Right.
will graduate and meet the qualification requirements by
Right.
June 30th. Tomorrow is the deadline, which means by 11:59 tomorrow, these have to be submitted, and then these have to be mailed to us by April 6th. So I would do this today, just because the staff in the office today, there'll be staff answering emails. So I mean, that way, if you absolutely have a catastrophic error or problem that prevents you from proceeding, you'll get an email to us and staff will be aware and they'll try to help you through it, or they'll provide an alternate means of applying. It won't be as easy as on mine, but it will definitely ensure that we can get an application from you and processed in time.
So just maybe folks, just to recap, in that work section, there's kind of 3 things you have to do. You have to mention you have to type in the name of your employer. You don't have an employer, you're going to school. So in the section that says name of the employer, you're going to type in your school name, and then you put the address of your school. Then when it asks for 2 work tasks, all you type in is task number 1, studying electrical installation 50%, and task number 2 is applying electrical installation 50%. So it's 3 things. Your employer is the name of your school. Your 2 tasks are studying electrical installation 50%, applying electrical installation 50%. Does that help?
I'll put it in the chat too.
Okay. I can do, you're right, Michael?
Yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, no, I'll do it.
So that's it. That's in the work section. That's all you have to do. And you also might be feeling when you get to that question that says, okay, everything you put in here is accurate and true. Well, it really isn't because you're not graduating in March. You're graduating in June, but don't you worry about that. Just check X, check that box. Yes, everything I just put in is accurate and true, and press the submit button. Don't worry about that.
Giovanni, you don't need to pay. Once you get a confirmation number, your application is submitted. But
Right.
good question, because that application isn't going to be complete until we receive this in the mail and we can mark it off as complete on our side. So everybody seeking a fee waiver is applying the same way that we've just instructed. However, the people that can pay and don't qualify for a fee waiver are going to proceed to the payment part. You're actually going to stop at the part of getting a confirmation number, which actually represents step 4 of the application instructions in the notice of examination, which, as it says here, applicants who apply online and wish to request a fee waiver must complete the online application steps 1 through 4. You will have completed them once you get a confirmation number. You will actually have completed your full application, meaning online app, and then also getting it made complete on our end by submitting the fee waiver document. So all of your online steps are done once you get the confirmation number. The only remaining thing that you need to do after that is to get us a copy of this fee waiver document that we've created for the students. Now, this doesn't need to be notarized. It does need to be mailed to us, though, by April 6th, meaning it needs to be postmarked by that day. So that way we can begin planning and make sure that we can link up the fee waiver document to the application. In the event that we don't receive a document like this from an online applicant, an email will be sent a few weeks after the application period closes, well, 1 to 2 weeks afterwards, providing the opportunity to either pay or to get us this document by a new date. It's sort of a second chance, but I'm trusting and I believe everybody can get us, everyone who applies online, who's participating today can get us one of these with at least postmarked within 2 weeks of tomorrow.
You could do that.
Yeah. Any other questions? I can probably stop sharing at this point to give anyone an opportunity to put it into the chat if needed. It seems,
Hey,
anyone?
Michael and Debbie, I don't know if this was addressed already, but do you guys have any idea if there will be another transit electrical helper opening for maybe next year, just for the students who aren't graduating this June?
Yeah, somebody
Yes.
asked, that was asked in the
Right.
chat. Yeah, that was actually brought up in the chat. I believe what I had said in the chat was that we typically do give this exam every year. Although there isn't an exam open or scheduled right now beyond this one, we do anticipate that we're probably going to have another one next year. I mean, it's just a matter of planning and getting caught up with other high need titles. But we will be giving this exam again, most likely. Not sure exactly when, but we'll be putting new exams on our schedule probably in July.
Yep. Oh, July of this year, Michael?
We might add some in July. Well, we'll
Okay.
add some to the schedule in July, but they won't be, open until, after that. So
Yeah, typically, Gab, that's a very good question. Typically, we open this filing every year because we never really get enough people passing the test. We never get enough applicants or people passing the test. Sometimes too, when we call them, you might be in a job that you love. So you decide not to come to transit and quit the job that you love. but you can always refile. We typically open this exam up in the first quarter of every year. But that's a very good point, ladies and gentlemen. The exams for transit typically open up on the first Friday of every month. So you really should be checking this site for helper titles on the first Friday of every month. And also New York City DCAS, they tend to open the first week of the month also.
Yeah, it's I don't have a printer. Can I just email the fee waiver? It would really be preferred if you can print that document and mail it to us, because we don't have a lot of staff in the office available to print those things. That was really the pretty much what held us back from allowing them to be emailed, is the limited in-office staff, and those records are needed for audit purposes with the rest of the city. So it's I would strongly recommend that between today and 2 weeks from now that you work on printing a copy and getting us a copy in the mail. It would be very helpful to us, and it would help ensure that your application is fully made complete after submitting online.
Jonathan, you may want to use maybe Staples or a local print and shop, because typically throughout the neighborhood you have these various local places where you can print stuff, or you can go by Staples or one of these other stores in case you don't have your own printer. You can just print it out there. Or you can even get in touch with your school or your previous school to ask if you can just print it out there as well.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's about it. I brought us back to the exams page again, just to familiarize people again. This is typically where we would post any examinations. We've got exams open, or at least scheduled now, into June, but not as many as we normally would. Come June, June actually ends the 2021 exam year. So the 2022 exam year will start in July. We could be posting exams as soon as July that we expect to open in the next 12 months after July. But for now, this is the current schedule. So if anyone...
And Mr. Nigro, could you scroll down just a little bit? I'd like to point something out since we have Gav Reed on the phone. No, I'm sorry, go up to what's open right now. Okay, you can, wait a minute, go down 2 more. All right, stop. Okay. See, thank you, Mr. Nigro. If you look at Gav, and those of you who have friends who are studying automotive maintenance, right now there's an opportunity open for CTE high school graduates who are studying automotive maintenance. It's exam number 1605, maintainer helper group B, auto mechanic helper. I know that Miss Buchanan and Miss Wendy Williams are speaking to all the schools as well about this title, but I just wanted to point that out since we have Mr. Reed on the phone, on the presentation rather. And when does that close? That will close on April 27th. Okay, so you've got a lot of time there. And it just may be something else to point out to everybody on this session. You see the titles that are currently open, the links are in blue. So you can access those notices of examination and you can apply. But if you scroll down, when you see the applications for next month, the exams that are scheduled for next month, you can't open these until the day they open. It sounds like basic, but some people will, I'll get calls every week saying, I can't access that test. Right, well, look at the application open day, and you can only access it once it's actually open.
Yeah, it's this attention notice here is kind of important. Please click on an exam's title below during the application period to view the notice of examination, which contains key details, including the requirements to compete in the exam, application instructions, any expected test dates, and other exam-specific test information. So that's why these blue exam titles are hyperlinks, because the application periods are currently open. This one's open through tomorrow, and then the other exams here are open through either tomorrow or, as Debbie said, April 27th, actually, for the auto mechanic helper exam, what we call Maintainers Helper Group B, exam number 1605. So if anyone wants to view that, they'll just click the blue text, and then the April exams and June exams, they'll be hyperlinked blue text once we hit April 9th and June 4th, respectively. We have a question. After you submit your application, when and how will you pay the fee? Daniel, this form is actually in lieu of you paying a fee. That's why we need this mailed to us, so we can actually staple it to a printout of your online application record. So when the city looks for civil service examination fees for all of our applicants, we've got a record of why you didn't pay. That's actually, and you're mailing it to us actually helps us enable that we've got those complete records, because we just don't have the staff to print them all out, sometimes potentially hundreds from the email account, especially when there might be relevant questions or important time-sensitive issues that are in that email account. So submitting this, completing it and mailing this to us is in lieu of paying the $68 fee. And we've created this custom form because most documentation types for fee waivers either require a notary or some kind of a public assistance benefits printout. We think this is easier for everybody because you won't have to get it notarized, but the only kind of mildly big lift is to make sure that you can print it, complete it, and mail it to us.
And Mr. Nigro, could you just put the cursor by the actual address? Okay, let's
yes.
go over the actual address that has to be on the envelope, folks. You mail it to, first line, Transit Electrical Helper, exam number 1601. This is on the envelope. Second line, MTA New York City Transit. Third line, 180 Livingston Street, room 4070. Fourth line, Brooklyn, New York, 11201. And make sure to write your full return address on the back of the envelope.
There's a good question in the chat. What if you have a full-time job but are still attending school? What I would say is this. If you are able to pay the application fee, you should pay the application fee. If you're unable to pay it, then by all means, submit this form after applying online and we'll waive it for you. That's the general response to that. I'm not a high school student anymore. I don't think I qualify anymore. If you are full-time employed, then I would pay the application fee. It's pretty minimal considering that it's based on the job salary. So if and when hired, you'd recoup that fee within the first couple hours of work. So it's really not anything that I would advise people use as a determining factor on whether or not to apply. Yeah, integrity rules. I think, Daniel, what you're saying is you don't qualify for the fee waiver, but as long as you've graduated from a vocational high school with the electrical installation focus or major, then you at least qualify for the examination, and that's really what's important. So if you want to apply and you're qualified to apply, I recommend it. If you can pay, then pay. If it represents too much of a hardship as this document describes, then
Right.
apply and mail us the document.
Right, because we're offering the fee waiver to alumni. If you're not working a full-time job, then you can get the fee waiver. But if you are able to pay, then you have to assess that. You should pay. If you're able to pay, then you go through the online process. If you're working full-time, you should be paying. But if you're out of high school and you're not working full-time, we're giving alumni, which are graduates of the school and students in the school, a fee waiver option in this one-page document. And we even took out the notary requirement. So you don't even have to get this notarized. All you have to do is print it out, fill it out, make sure you put in your application confirmation number and mail it in before April 6th, okay?
Any other questions before I stop sharing? I think I can probably stop sharing now unless we have any other Questions about the notice of examination. Where can I find the applicant ID number? Good question. If you've not applied for an exam before, then you will not know what your applicant ID number is. One will be created for you when you actually register, but you won't know what it is. So that's why we said here, applicant ID number if known. If you're familiar with what your applicant ID number is from prior examinations, by all means, feel free to put it here. If you don't know, then don't worry. We're just trying to make sure that we get enough information from you to link this document up to the online application. And the things that'll help us do that is using the same name with which you've applied. A full social or last four of the social would help us. The online application confirmation number would help us link it up. The only reason we said applicable here is because some people may have to apply by mail due to computer issues. And if they do, they won't have one of these. But including this document with a mailed-in application is even easier to link up because the two documents are next to each other when we receive them. However, online applications are the safest way to ensure that you've applied. So, and you can do them from home. The only extra piece of work you have to do is make sure you mail us this by April 6th. And it just needs to be postmarked by April 6th. Good question there. Any other questions? Okay, well, I'm gonna stop sharing then, Debbie. I think everybody is good for now. They have your contact information if they have any questions.
I think
Yeah.
we're good. Mr. Dela Cruz, anyone from Co-op Tech? Gav, what do you think? You think we're pretty comprehensive now? And
I just wanted to take a moment and say thank you, really thank you for everything that you guys do. And thank you, Gav, as well.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, this was pretty good. This was very, very in-depth and comprehensive. Hopefully we can get some more applicants. This was a very, very good job, Debbie and Mike. Thank you.
No
thank
problem.
you
Thanks
very
for having
much,
us.
Gav. Gav, thank you for always advocating for transit. It's wonderful to have you as our relationship manager. And I'd like to thank my colleague, Michael Nigro, for taking time out of his incredible busy day to present this to all of these potential applicants. We need you, young people. We need you to come to transit. So study hard and we look forward to working with you.
I have a quick
Thank
question
you.
before we go.
Someone's got a question.
I got a question. So do you guys have any, I don't know, tips or recommendations for us for like any books or websites that we could go to study for the test?
The best advice I would give you on preparing for the multiple choice test is to review those ability sections in the notice of examination. That's going to be the primary focus of the multiple choice test. It would be on the abilities and the
Can you
measurement.
repeat that real quick?
The test section in the notice of examination, that's going to be the primary. I'll share my screen one more time. In the notice of examination, there's a test section that describes what the test is going to be on. That's the primary description that's out there. There's no manual or study guide. This is what the test is going to be on. We're going to measure your ability to comprehend written English, to use written English, as Debbie described, deductive reasoning, the ability to apply general rules to specific problems, information ordering, the ability to follow correctly a rule or set of rules in order, and number facility, which is adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. Now, I mean, these are going to be questions that are attempting to measure your ability based on how these abilities apply to being a transit electrical helper, but this is your roadmap for the multiple choice test, and it's pass-fail. So you just need to achieve a 70% in order to pass. I would familiarize myself with this. By all means, you could prepare by attempting to review any available material out there regarding these abilities. But this is their primary focus of the multiple choice test.
And I just threw in a couple of other tips that I really hear from our trainers, not about the test, But our trainers tell us once you start the job, the students who understand, the new hires that understand Ohm's law and how to apply Ohm's law and how to use a multimeter, those are the folks who do very well in the training program. That's not really the test, but that's, you're in school now, you have a couple of months left to study Ohm's law, how to apply it, how to use a multimeter for problem solving. And once you get here, you should be golden.
All right.
I think I heard somebody. Any other questions? I think I heard somebody asking something.
No, that was me. I said thanks.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing again if that's okay with everyone.
So once again, thank you. I'm gonna head to my next class, but I really
Okay.
appreciate everything. Take care.
Thank
Thank
you
you
all
all.
very much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you for
Thank you,
everything.
Gav.
You got it. Take care, everyone.
Thanks.
All right, bye-bye.
Ooh, can we possibly, if Gab's still on, I wanted to see about getting a copy of the recording of
Yep,
this.
yep, I'll record it. I'll email you the recording and everybody who attended as well within the next few hours.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thanks
That's
so
a
much,
huge
Gav.
benefit. Thank
Yep,
you.
got it. All right, take care, everyone.